Welcome, brave souls. If you're drawn to the things that creak in the night, to whispers behind closed doors, and stories that were never meant to be told, you're in the right place. This is the channel where real hauntings come to life, where legends breathe, and the shadows speak high. So before we begin, make sure you're subscribed. Turn on notifications, because the spirits don't wait. And drop a comment if you've ever felt a chill you couldn't explain. Because once the stories start, you're not watching alone anymore. They say home is where the heart is. But in this home, it's where the screaming never stopped. Across Canada, behind quiet doors and crooked porches, something stirs, not memories, not echoes, something still alive, long after death. A rocking chair that moves on its own, a light that turns off when you pray, a face in the mirror that doesn't match your own. And in some of these places, the spirits don't just watch, they wait. Tonight, we open the doors to 15 of the most haunted houses in Canada. Homes built on grief, madness, and blood. Homes where people moved in and were never the same again. This isn't folklore. These are real places, real stories, and some of them are still on the market. But before you step inside, we have to warn you. Some of these spirits don't like being seen. Some don't like being named. And if you listen too closely, they might follow you home. So keep your eyes open, and whatever you do, don't answer the knock at the door. Canada's land is wide and old, older than its towns, older than its borders. It holds stories buried deep, stories of war, betrayal, grief, and death. From the isolated homesteads of the Maritimes to the abandoned manors of British Columbia, homes were built on land that had already seen too much. Sacred grounds disturbed, battlefields forgotten, bodies left without peace. Settlers carved their lives into the soil, but they didn't ask who was already there. Some houses were built over ancient burial sites. Some stand where executions once took place. Others hide darker things, secrets behind walls, blood beneath the floorboards, entire rooms sealed shut and never spoken of again. And then there's the weather, the cold, the silence. It amplifies every sound, every creak, every whisper in the dark. In this country, time doesn't bury the past. It freezes it in place, trapped, waiting for the right house, the right family, to wake it up. And when they do, it doesn't want to leave. White paint, tilted chimney, narrow windows that fog even in summer. But once you step inside, something changes, and it never lets you go. Locals call it the Screaming House. It belonged to Esther Cox in the late 80s. At just 18 years old, after surviving an attempted assault, Esther began experiencing something no one could explain. Loud bangs shook the walls, furniture flew across the room, voices yelled in empty halls, and at night, the screaming began. Not from Esther, not from the family, from the walls. Neighbors heard it, ministers heard it, even the police. Men witnessed her bed levitate off the ground while she screamed in terror. Messages scratched into the walls by unseen hands. One read, "Esther, you are mine to kill." It was one of the first recorded cases of poltergeist possession in Canadian history. And unlike most stories that fade over time, this one only grew stronger. Esther was moved from room to room. The entities followed. Fires started in places no one had been. Water turned to blood. Objects flew, even in the presence of skeptical investigators. And when she finally fled, the house went silent, but not for long. Decades later, new residents reported whispers in the attic, doors slammed without warning, screams echoing from the baseboards, always around 3, just like before. Some believe Esther wasn't the victim of a haunting but the source, that her pain split something open inside the house, and now that crack bleeds energy. Others say something darker latched onto her and stayed behind. Today, the house is privately owned. The address is not shared, but if you find yourself walking the back streets of Amherst, and you hear a woman scream from inside a locked home. Don't knock. Don't go near the window, and whatever you do, don't say her name out loud. We've only just stepped inside, but the next house doesn't scream. It watches and it remembers what you've done. Number 2. The Ma Residence. Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Built in 1884, the Ma Residence stands as one of the oldest houses in Saskatoon. It once served as a military field hospital during the Northwest Rebellion. Soldiers bled out in the bedrooms. Some never left the house at all, and now something else occupies the space they died in. Volunteers working the museum have reported strange sounds at night. Footsteps on the upper floor, whispers in the corners, heavy boots walking where no one stands, and the sensation that someone is always just behind them. One curator claimed she saw a man in a military coat standing at the top of the stairs. His face was half gone, his mouth moved but no words came out. When she reached for the light, he vanished, but the floorboards creaked for several minutes after. Visitors often complain of a cold weight in their chest while walking through the dining room. Children refuse to enter the upstairs bedrooms. Some point at the ceiling and say someone is crying. No one is ever there, but the crying continues. Photos taken inside often show a second face reflected in mirrors. Not a reflection, not a trick of light. A face in an old uniform, eyes hollow, mouth open, as if calling out, always behind someone else, always watching. Some say the house is just active because of its age, that it's simply memories replaying, but others believe the pain soaked into the floorboards and made the house itself aware, a thinking place, a watching thing. The Ma Residence does not lash out, it waits, and it watches, and if you stay long enough you'll feel it blink. Number 3. The Jarvis Street Mansion, Toronto, Ontario. In the heart of downtown Toronto sits a towering Victorian mansion, once elegant, now crumbling, covered in ivy that grows too fast, even in winter. Locals walk past it quickly, eyes forward, because those who look too long see something in the windows. This was once the home of a wealthy banker. He built the house for his bride, but on their wedding night, she disappeared. Some said she ran, some whispered she was murdered. Her body was never found. What was found was her wedding dress, still hanging in the bedroom, still soaked in something dark. The banker refused to speak of her. He lived alone in the house until his death. And after that, things got worse. Tenants who moved in after the estate was sold reported sobbing in the hallways. Not quiet, full, open-mouthed weeping, always at the same hour, always coming from the top floor. Doors slam shut on their own, mirrors crack without cause, and every year on the anniversary of the wedding night, neighbors report hearing a woman screaming from the tower room. Not once, 3 times, like a cry that repeats until someone answers. A construction crew hired to restore the house abandoned the project after only 2 weeks. One worker broke his arm falling down the stairs. He claimed something pushed him. Another was found in the basement, sitting on the floor, whispering the same phrase over and over. She was never supposed to leave. There are no open tours, no listings. The house remains locked, but those who live nearby still hear movement at night, the soft shuffle of a dress, a knock from the inside. They say her spirit is bound by betrayal. She was promised a life. She was given a grave, and now, every night, she returns for what was stolen. We've met those who were forgotten, those who watched, those who wept, but the next house is different. It never waited. It invited something in, and it never let it go. By day, it's a luxurious getaway. By night, it's something else entirely. Deep within its halls, one room is whispered about more than any other. Room 873. Guests used to stay there but not anymore. The door is sealed with drywall. No keycard opens it. Housekeeping skips it without question. Because what happened in that room was so disturbing, the hotel removed it entirely from service, or at least, they tried to. The story goes that a man once stayed there with his wife and young daughter. Something changed during the night. Some say it was a breakdown, others, possession. But by sunrise, all three were dead, murdered, and the man was never found. Afterwards, guests who stayed in the room reported terrifying disturbances, screams in the middle of the night, bloody handprints appearing on the bathroom mirror. Even after they were cleaned, the prints always returned. One guest claimed he awoke to a small girl standing at the foot of the bed. Her mouth was open, but no sound came out. Her eyes were black. Her dress was torn. Maintenance crews reported the lights flickering violently in room 873. Some refused to enter without a partner. A few claimed to see their own reflections blink when they hadn't. Eventually, the hotel sealed the room completely. There is no room 873 now, not officially. But if you walk the hallway where it once stood, you'll notice something strange. The numbers skip, and in that space the temperature drops. Some guests say they feel watched. Others say they hear knocking behind the wall. The Banff Springs Hotel is still open for business. Its beauty is real. Its history is respected. But for those who know where to listen, room 873 still exists, just on the other side of the drywall, waiting. We've now entered the territory of the erased places, not just haunted, but hidden. And the next house is no hotel. It was a home, until it turned on the family that built it. Number 5. The Keeler House Museum, Dorchester, New Brunswick. Perched on a hill in the sleepy town of Dorchester sits the Keeler House, an elegant stone mansion built in 1813. By daylight it's a preserved museum filled with antiques, portraits and lace-covered furniture. But once the sun sets, the house reveals what truly lingers behind its ornate walls. The Keeler House was home to the Keeler family for generations, but its legacy is shadowed by tragedy. Multiple deaths occurred inside, some expected, some violent, and some unexplained. One of the most infamous legends involves a governess who worked there in the 1800s. She went missing one winter evening. Her body was never recovered, but strange stains were found in the basement years later. Some say she was murdered and buried on the property. Others believe she never left at all. Visitors and staff have reported intense feelings of dread in certain rooms, especially near the old nursery. Tour guides speak of objects moving on their own, particularly a rocking chair that creaks in the corner when no one is sitting in it. Footsteps echo through the halls long after the building is locked for the night. A security guard once heard a woman's voice whispering directly behind him. When he turned, he found the portrait of the missing governess lying face down on the floor, its glass shattered, even though no one else was in the house. Perhaps the most disturbing reports come from those who sleep over, as part of the museum's rare paranormal program. Several guests have claimed to feel a hand wrap around their wrist in the night. Others wake to the sound of soft sobbing in the room, though no one else is there. Locals say the house remembers every soul that passed through its doors, and the ones that suffered echo the loudest. It stands still, proud and polished, but beneath the dusted chandeliers and velvet ropes, something remains. The Keeler House was meant to preserve history. Instead, it keeps it alive. Tucked along the shores of Kamloops Lake sits the Tranquil Sanatorium, once a place of healing, now a sprawling labyrinth of cracked walls, shattered glass, and unbearable silence. Though not a house in the traditional sense, it was home to hundreds who lived, suffered, and died within its walls, and what was left behind is far from silent. Built in the early 1900s to treat tuberculosis patients, Tranquil quickly became overcrowded. Entire families were separated here. Some were quarantined for months, and others for years. Many never saw the outside world again. Children were born here, and many died before ever leaving the property. After TB treatments declined, the sanatorium was briefly converted into a mental institution. That's when the stories became darker. Patients claimed to see people who weren't there. Staff reported screams in the hallways and objects flying off shelves. One nurse quit after witnessing a patient convulsing during the night, even though his body had been in the mortuary for 3 hours. When the facility was finally shut down in the 1980s, it was left abandoned. But even in its decay, people kept coming. Urban explorers, paranormal investigators, skeptics. Some returned with stories, some didn't return at all. Those who enter describe the same things: the overwhelming sense of being watched, whispers in the tunnel system below the complex, and sudden nosebleeds upon entering the children's ward. There are reports of shadow figures darting across doorways, cold hands touching shoulders, and laughter that turns to screaming within seconds. One viral video showed a team walking in the basement when a door slammed behind them. The lights failed, and in the audio, a voice can be heard whispering, "You never left." The footage ends abruptly. Today, tours are available, but they come with warning. Visitors have fainted, fallen ill, or experienced night terrors days after leaving. Some say the spirits of Tranquil don't just linger, they follow. Because the sanatorium was more than a hospital, it was a holding place for those the world forgot. And in death, they remembered. We've seen houses bound by rage, grief, and betrayal, but the next house is different. It never suffered a haunting. It invited one, and celebrated it. Number 7. The Bell Island Haunted House, Newfoundland and Labrador. Bell Island, off the coast of Newfoundland, is known for its mines, its quiet beauty, and its secrets. Among the island's cliffs and mist sits a simple white house, unmarked, weather-beaten. At first glance, it seems no different than any other home in a rural fishing village. Until you spend a night inside. The Bell Island Haunted House has been called the most paranormally active residence in the province. The haunting isn't new. It dates back decades, possibly longer. Locals speak in hushed tones about the land. Some say it was cursed by a grieving mother. Others believe something was unearthed from the mines and never returned. The house first made headlines in the 1970s, when the family living there reported violent electrical disturbances. Appliances would turn on by themselves. Radios played static with no power source. One night a blinding flash of light exploded through the kitchen, cracking the walls and tossing furniture across the room. Investigators dubbed it the Bell Island Boom. Scientists couldn't fully explain it. Some blamed underground power surges, but the family insisted it was something else. They moved out shortly after, and the house sat empty. But it didn't stay quiet. People who've entered since report lights flickering violently despite no electricity. Disembodied voices call out from the upper floors. A child's giggle echoes through the stairwell, always from just out of sight. A group of paranormal investigators once left the house in the middle of the night, after one of them claimed their arm was grabbed by an invisible hand that left red marks. The skin burnt for days. Neighbors still hear noises from the home, knocking on windows, doors slamming shut, and sometimes screams. No one lives there anymore. The house is boarded up, though brave souls sometimes sneak in. Some leave laughing, disappointed. Others leave pale and shaking, refusing to speak. The Bell Island house doesn't just echo with the past. It pulses, it hums, it warns. Number 8. The McNeil House, Prince Edward Island, Devereux. On a quiet back road near Charlottetown stands the McNeil House. Painted red and shutters faded, it looks like something out of a storybook. But behind the curtains, something watches, and what this house holds isn't meant to be seen. The McNeil family built the house in the 1870s. It was meant to be a generational home. Strong roots, simple living, but tragedy struck early. The youngest daughter, Eleanor, vanished during a storm. Her body was never found, though neighbors claim they heard screaming in the woods that night. After that, nothing was ever the same. The mother took ill, refusing to leave Eleanor's room. The father sealed the attic without explanation. Over time, more strange events unfolded. A visiting cousin fell down the stairs and broke her neck. She claimed someone had pushed her just before she slipped. A hired hand fled the property, saying he saw Eleanor standing barefoot in the orchard, 17 years after she vanished. By the 1920s, the house was abandoned, but it never stayed quiet. People passing by reported a candle flickering in the upstairs window. Children dared each other to get close. Some say they heard tapping on the glass, while others said the door opened slightly on its own. When restoration crews attempted to renovate the house in the 1990s, the work stalled, tools disappeared, paint peeled off freshly coated walls. One contractor quit after he swore he saw a little girl standing at the top of the attic stairs, her face blurred, dress dripping wet, eyes black. Paranormal teams have recorded unexplained sounds in the house, whispers in Old Gaelic, a woman humming lullabies that no one recognizes. In one video, the attic door opens by itself, and a shadow crosses the floor behind the cameraman. Though he saw nothing at the time, what makes the McNeil house terrifying isn't what's been seen, it's what's felt, that this house is holding its breath, that it remembers something and wants you to see it too. Now we've heard crying, seen rage, and felt silence. But the next house doesn't mourn. It invites with light in the windows, and something smiling in the dark. Haunted House, number 9. The Lady in Red House, St. Andrews, New Brunswick. Wick House. St. Andrews is one of Canada's most charming seaside towns, filled with historic architecture and friendly locals. But just outside the town square, tucked among trees and old fences, sits a home most residents avoid after dark. They call it the Lady in Red House, and not out of affection. The legend goes back over 100 years. A wealthy merchant built the house for his bride, a woman known for her beauty and temper. Their marriage was short-lived. One winter she discovered he had taken a mistress. That same night, she dressed in her finest red gown, walked upstairs, and took her own life in the master bedroom. The tragedy could have ended there, but it didn't. It didn't. You see. Soon after her death, guests reported seeing her walking down the staircase, her red dress glowing faintly in the dark. The floorboards creaked under invisible steps, mirrors fogged without cause, and the air smelt faintly of roses, even in winter. Tenants who lived there after the merchant's death didn't last long. Some claimed they'd wake up with deep scratches on their arms. Others heard heavy breathing in their room. One couple fled in the middle of the night, after seeing a woman standing in the doorway, staring silently at them with red eyes. The house has been abandoned more than once. Each time someone tries to renovate it, something goes wrong. Fires start. Lights explode. One worker reportedly fell from the roof after swearing he saw someone waving at him from inside, even though the house was supposed to be empty. Today, the Lady in Red is still seen. She stands at the upstairs window most nights before a storm. Her face is blurred. Her dress is soaked in crimson, and if you stare too long, she moves closer to the glass. Locals say she isn't trapped, she's angry, that her heartbreak turned to hatred, and now she punishes anyone who enters what she still calls home. The Lady in Red doesn't cry, she waits, and when you open the front door, she's already standing behind it. The spirits grow bolder now, but the next house doesn't only hold a ghost, it holds an entire family that refuses to stay buried. Number 10. The Dag Family Farmhouse, Clarendon, Quebec. In the rural countryside of Clarendon, Quebec, the Dag family once lived in a quiet farmhouse surrounded by thick woods and open fields. It was supposed to be a peaceful life, but in the autumn of 1889, peace gave way to something terrifying, a haunting that shook the entire community. It started small. knocking on the walls and furniture slightly out of place. Footsteps in the hallway when no one was there. The family tried to ignore it, but the disturbances grew. Plates began flying from shelves. Doors slammed on their own, and then the voices started whispering, mocking, always in the dark. The family reported the activity to neighbors and clergy. Witnesses began coming to the house, expecting tricks or exaggeration. Instead, they saw the same things: a disembodied hand reaching out from under a bed, rocks falling from the ceiling, a baby lifted from its crib and dropped by an unseen force. Word spread quickly, and the Dag haunting became one of the earliest documented cases of extreme poltergeist activity in Canada. Investigators came, priests performed blessings. Nothing worked. The spirit, or whatever it was, called itself Peter through crude messages and scratches on the walls. It would appear as a shadow, hiss in people's ears, and scream in the middle of the night. It especially targeted the children, pulling hair and whispering threats while they slept. Eventually the Dag family was forced to leave. After they moved, the farmhouse sat empty. Years later, a new family tried to settle in, but the haunting resumed. It wasn't as violent at first, but the same cold spots, whispers and tapping returned. They didn't stay long. Today, the farmhouse is rarely spoken about in the town. Some say it was torn down. Others believe it still stands, hidden off a back road. Locals warn strangers not to look for it. They say Peter never left, that he waits for new voices, new footsteps, and new fear to feed off of. The Dag haunting wasn't about sorrow or revenge. It was about control, and the entity that lived in that house wanted one thing: to be seen, to be heard, and to be feared. The disturbances are getting darker, right? The next house isn't haunted by something old. It's haunted by something that was invited inside, and it never left. Haunted house number 11. The Gibson House, Hamilton, Ontario. Just off the edge of downtown Hamilton sits the Gibson House, a Victorian-style home built in the mid-1800s by one of the city's wealthiest families. From the outside, it still looks stately, with tall windows, polished brick, and a manicured lawn. But for those who've stepped inside, the stories tell a very different tale. The Gibson family was known for their influence in the textile trade, but also for secrecy. Rumors swirled around strange illnesses in the house, odd behavior by the children, and servants who left suddenly without explanation. Over the years, whispers grew louder. One of the daughters was said to have gone missing, never officially reported. Another was confined to a locked room for years after showing signs of what her father called moral instability. After the last member of the Gibson family passed away, the house was donated to the city and converted into a historic site. But staff and volunteers began experiencing things they couldn't explain. Lights flickered violently in the upper rooms. Doors would lock and unlock on their own. People reported hearing soft singing coming from the attic, a child's voice humming the same melody over and over. Visitors to the house often complain of sudden cold chills and an overwhelming sense of dread in the drawing room. One tour group stopped in front of a mirror, and all swore they saw a figure standing behind them, a woman in a pale dress, expression blank, eyes wide. A night security guard once reported seeing a candle burning in an upstairs window long after closing. When he went inside to investigate, the room was freezing. The candle was cold to the touch, and the flame had left no wax. Psychics who visited the home claim the energy is not just residual. They believe the spirits here are intelligent, aware of the living, and reacting to their presence. Some even claim the house is acting as a container, keeping something inside that should not be released. The Gibson house does not shout or slam or burn. It observes, it waits, and it shows itself only to those it chooses. Those who linger too long often leave changed, nervous, distant, and unable to speak about what they saw. The Seven Oaks house stands quietly at the end of a shaded lane in Winnipeg. Built in 1851, It's one of the oldest remaining residences in the city, a preserved museum of prairie history. But beneath the wooden beams and old furniture, something else lingers, something not recorded in any tour guide. The home once belonged to John Inkster, a respected businessman and politician. He raised a large family in the house, and for decades, everything appeared normal. But staff and visitors today know there are places inside where history refuses to rest. The hauntings began subtly, footsteps in the hallway when no one was around, the scent of pipe smoke drifting from empty rooms. Visitors often report seeing a man standing at the top of the stairs, wearing old-fashioned clothes, silently watches. When approached he vanishes, leaving behind a freezing draft and the sound of floorboards creaking behind you. One staff member claimed she was closing up for the night when she heard the piano begin to play by itself. Soft, slow notes echoed through the house. She ran to the room, only to find it empty and the piano lid closed. Other employees report locked doors opening suddenly, display items shifting position without explanation, cold spots that appear instantly in the same two rooms, the children's bedroom and the former study. Visitors occasionally feel as if someone is brushing past them in the narrow hallway, or hear their name whispered softly near the stairwell. But it's the basement that leaves the deepest impression. Originally used for food storage and servant quarters, the air down there is heavy. Multiple people have fainted while walking through. Some say they see shapes moving just out of reach. Others report sudden feelings of grief or dread with no warning at all. The house may be a museum now, but those who work there believe something remains tied to it. Whether it's a member of the Inkster family or something older, darker, and less human, no one knows for sure. But whatever it is, it has no intention of leaving. Sevenoaks House isn't a violent haunting. It's quiet, cold, constant, and that's what makes it worse. It doesn't need to show its face, it's always there. Number 13, the Christie Mansion, Toronto, Ontario. Tucked behind the lush grounds of the University of Toronto, stands the Christie Mansion. From the outside, it looks like an elegant Gothic revival home. Inside, it carries the dark legacy of a secret that was hidden for decades. This mansion was once owned by William Mellis Christie, the wealthy biscuit tycoon. After his death, his son inherited the home and turned it into something far more disturbing. According to long-whispered rumors, he kept a mistress hidden away inside a concealed room at the back of the house. She was forbidden to leave, locked away from the outside world. Over time, her isolation turned to madness. Eventually she took her own life in that hidden room, and that's when the real haunting began. Students and faculty who've been inside the building since it became part of the university's administration have reported eerie sensations. Lights flicker in the hallway leading to the back of the house. Strange shadows move across the walls, even when the room is still. At night, staff have heard soft crying from behind the wall, where the hidden room once stood. One janitor refused to return after seeing a woman in a torn dress appear near the third-floor staircase. She was staring directly at him, her face pale, her eyes empty. When he turned the light on, she was gone, but the hallway smelled strongly of perfume. Visitors to the building sometimes report an overwhelming sense of sadness, especially in the hallway near the old servant stairs. Several have claimed to feel a pressure on their chest, as if someone is standing too close. One professor even reported hearing tapping on the walls during a late-night meeting. The tapping matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. It only stopped when he left the room. Although renovations have tried to modernize the mansion, strange things continue to happen. A locked door will suddenly swing open, phones ring with no caller, and the portrait of the Christie heir has been known to tilt slightly, even when no one is near it. What makes the Christie Mansion terrifying is not just the ghost, it's the silence that kept her hidden. The walls absorbed her suffering, and now They replay it over and over for anyone who gets too close. Deep in the dense woods outside Ottawa lies Buck Hill Road, a place wrapped in fog and silence. At the end of this forgotten trail once stood a small house, plain, wooden, and worn by time. Nothing remains of the structure today, but the land where it stood is said to be cursed, and the story attached to it continues to terrify locals. Some say she had wandered into the woods. Others believe someone took her. Desperate, the father searched through the snow-covered forest with only a lantern in hand, calling her name until his voice gave out. Days later, neighbors said they saw him walking the road again, lantern swinging, eyes sunken. Then one morning, the search stopped. The house was empty. The father had vanished, just like his daughter. Ever since, reports from Buck Hill have only grown more disturbing. Drivers passing through at night often see a flickering light weaving between the trees, a single lantern glowing just ahead of them, always out of reach. Some claim to hear a man shouting, voice broken by grief, calling a name no one can make out. The light then fades into the trees and disappears completely. Others report something more physical, cold spots that settle in the back seat of their cars, fog that rolls in within seconds, thick enough to blind their headlight. And one couple claimed they stopped when they thought they hit something on the road, only to find nothing. Seconds later, their rear window fogged up with a message, written by a finger from the inside, "She's still lost." Investigators who visited the site say the ground itself feels wrong. One described hearing footsteps circling her tent all night, while her motion sensors stayed silent. Another experienced full audio equipment failure, except for one faint recording of a man's voice whispering, "She's cold." The Buck Hill house may be gone, but whatever happened there still plays out like a broken record. And if you're unlucky enough to visit at the right moment, you'll see the lantern too, and you'll hear what loneliness sounds like after death. Now we leave the woods behind, but the final house waits in plain sight. Behind its doors is no legend, no echo of pain, only the unexplained vanishing of a visitor, caught on camera and never seen again. Right on Jarvis Street in downtown Toronto sits the Keg Mansion, a grand Gothic revival home built in 18. Today it's a high-end steakhouse with stained glass windows, dark wood interiors, and soft music playing above clinking wine glasses. But beneath the surface, this building holds one of the city's most persistent ghost stories. Tragedy hit in the early 1900s, when Lillian Massey, the beloved daughter of Hart Massey, passed away. Her death devastated the household, but it struck one member harder than the rest, a loyal maid who had served Lillian for years. Shortly after the funeral, the maid was found dead. She had taken her own life by hanging herself above the grand staircase. Some say it was out of grief. Others believe there were secrets between her and the family that were never meant to come out. Either way, her spirit never left the house. Staff at the restaurant often report footsteps coming down the stairs long after closing. Plates fall from shelves without warning. Lights flicker in the women's restroom upstairs, and doors slam shut without a breeze in the air. Several guests have claimed to see a woman hanging in the air for just a split second before vanishing. One server refused to go back up the stairs alone after feeling a hand touch her shoulder, followed by a soft sob in her ear. No one was behind her. Cleaning crews have reported the sound of heels clicking along the hardwood floor after the building has been locked for the night. A former manager once shared that security footage showed a shadow pacing in circles in one of the private dining rooms for over 2 hours. The room was locked the entire time. Despite the elegance and warmth inside the Keg Mansion, many who visit feel a heaviness they can't explain. Guests often describe a sense that someone is watching them, not from across the room but from above. It's persistent. It clings to the air, to the wood, to the memory of a woman who gave her entire life to a family, only to leave it behind in silence. But if you look toward the top of the stairs and feel a sudden chill, don't look too long. She still mourns, and sometimes she doesn't mourn alone. These aren't just old homes or empty corridors. They are living memories, stitched into the wood, stone, and silence. Every whisper you heard, every shadow you thought you imagined, someone else saw it too. And maybe, something saw you, but every single one carries a warning. You may enter alone, but you will not leave untouched. So the next time you pass a home with boarded windows or flickering lights, the next time a chill rolls up your spine without a breathe, the next time you hear footsteps that don't match your own, don't turn around, because something might already be standing there. Now I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell us what you experienced. And if you made it this far, you know it isn't over. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share, because next time, we're going somewhere darker. Some doors open on their own, and once they do, they don't always close. Sleep well, if you